guys, come on down here and check out this cool pool. So here's the cool pool. As you can see, it's got some water striders on it. There's a lot of leaf litter in here. There's some rocks and cobble, all sorts of cool stuff. Now you might just walk by this every day, but there's a whole world underneath that water surface. And so what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you are the size of a thumbnail. So small. How would you survive? Imagine you lived in this pool underwater. What would you eat? Where would you live? Do you have any predators? How would you breathe? These are such important questions, being such a small little creature underwater. So think about that for a minute. How would you survive, maybe in a creek or a river or this very pool, as a teeny, tiny organism? Bop, bop. Well, did you come up with a way on how you were going to survive? I bet you came up with some really creative ways. But did you know that there are actually little organisms that have to survive underwater right in this pool, right in this leaf litter? And if you get to go out to any parks or sites, they're going to live in the water bodies there too. They're called macroinvertebrates. Maybe you've heard this word before and maybe you haven't. It really is a mouthful. But we're going to break it down so you can understand what exactly a macroinvertebrate is. So the first part of the word is macro. Macro sounds a lot like micro. And so when you think of micro, you're thinking of something really small. You think of something that you would see in a microscope, maybe like an animal cell or a plant cell. But macro is a bit different than micro. Macro means we don't need a tool like a microscope to see this. Macro is something we can see with our own eyes. So we're looking at something that's living in this pool, in this leaf litter, that we can see with our own eyes. The second part of macroinvertebrate is invertebrate. Now you might be a bit more familiar with this word. Basically, invertebrate means an organism that doesn't have a backbone. So when we put the words together, we have something we can see with our eye that doesn't have a backbone. Can you think of any organisms that might live in the water that fit this? What comes to my mind is like insects, or clams, or mussels, or even leeches and worms. There's all sorts of things living in here, and so they're also really important to our watershed. Do you have any ideas why such small little organisms might be so important? So there are two reasons why macroinvertebrates are so important to our watershed. The first being they're a super important food source for juvenile salmon survival. The second reason is that macroinvertebrates are considered an indicator species. Now you may or may not have heard this term as well, but an indicator species is, if you guessed it, it's a species that can indicate the health of our watershed, the health of the stream or river. They can really tell us what's going on, if our rivers are polluted or if they're cold and are doing great and the salmon are doing great. For macroinvertebrates to be an indicator species, we break them down into three categories. The first category are sensitive macroinvertebrates. These macroinvertebrates like really cool and clean waters. You're not going to find them in warm or polluted waters. So they indicate when you have a healthy stream. The second category are somewhat sensitive macroinvertebrates. These macros like clean, healthy waters, but they also can live in somewhat polluted areas. So they're kind of in a middle ground species where if you have a lot of them along with sensitive, you have a really healthy water body. And the third final category are tolerant macroinvertebrates. these macroinvertebrates can handle warm and somewhat polluted water. So if you have a lot of them and you're not seeing any sensitive species, that means that your water is probably pretty polluted and you might need to do something to help clean up your water body. So now what we're going to do is we're going to practice catching macroinvertebrates and determining stream health by using our macroinvertebrate simulation game. So this is found in your curriculum packet, and it's a game we're going to play. And so you can follow the next clip to see how we're going to play and catch macroinvertebrates. For the macroinvertebrate simulation game, you will need your stream printout, your macroinvertebrate name printout, you will need your Streamwebs datasheet, your macroinvertebrate guide, your die, and a pencil. So to play this awesome macroinvertebrate game, we're going to start off with the stream, and you're going to come up with a name for your water body. So as you can see, I wrote Lucky Duck Creek. I like ducks, and so I decided to pick a creek because I love exploring creeks. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to either close your eyes and pick different macroinvertebrate names, or you're going to cut them out like I did, and I shuffled them here. And what you're going to do next is, once you have them all hidden or randomly selected, I'm going to choose 6 to put in my stream. And these are going to be the macroinvertebrates that we catch in this stream. So my first one, I got a whirligig beetle. Second one, I got a water mite. Third, thistle beetle. Fourth, dragonfly nymph. Fifth, I got a cranefly. And last but not least, a flatworm. And so from here, what you're going to do is you're going to roll the die to see how many of each you caught. And you can roll it once for a macroinvertebrate, or you can roll it a couple times. So I got 2. I'm going to put 2 under the whirligig beetle. 5, I'll do 5 water mites. I don't know if I should do the whole thing or not. Yeah, 6 whistle beetles. That's a lot of whistle beetles. 6 dragonfly nymphs. 2 craneflies. And 5 flatworms. So once we've finished catching the macroinvertebrates and rolling the die to see how many macros we've caught of each species, we're going to move on to our data sheet, because this is where we are going to determine the health of our stream. So first you're going to fill it out with your name, your school, the date, the name of your water body, and then the weather. And you can make up the weather for this. Maybe it was stormy, or maybe it was beautiful and sunny out. After you've filled out the top, the second part, you're going to see these 3 big columns, and these break up the macroinvertebrates into their 3 categories. So we have sensitive, somewhat sensitive, and tolerant. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the macroinvertebrates I caught and try and find them on the data sheet. And so we'll start with the whirligig beetle. So as I look through, I notice there's no whirligig beetle listed. So some of the macroinvertebrates you catch might actually not be specifically on the data sheet, but that's okay, because we have an awesome macroinvertebrate guide. And at the bottom for each type of macroinvertebrate, it will tell you what column it belongs to. So this one in yellow is the whirligig beetle, and it's tolerant. And we caught 2 whirligig beetles, so I'm going to just add an extra number up here to 2. And this will just go above the number found. Next, we're going to look for a flatworm. And so as I go through here, again, I'm not really seeing a flatworm, but there is a group called aquatic worms, and that will work. So I'm going to do a 5 right there. What's next? Third is our riffle beetle. So let's look for the riffle beetles. And they're actually right here in the sensitive category. So I'm going to add my 6 to the riffle beetle. And so we're going to carry on like this, filling it out until you have all your macroinvertebrates filled in. Once all your macroinvertebrates have filled in, what you're going to do is you are going to total the number of different species you have caught for each category. So we're going to use an example here for the tolerant group. So I've caught 2 different species of tolerant macroinvertebrates. So what I'm going to do is each species is worth 1 point for tolerant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up those 2 points. So the score is 1. And so I would come up with 1 point for my whirligig beetle and 1 point for my flatworm. So that is a total of 2. Let's see. So now that we have tolerant finished with our total, next we're going to move to somewhat sensitive. And so I actually have 3 somewhat sensitive species in my stream. So we have the water mite, where we caught 5. We have the crane fly, where we caught 2. And we have dragonfly nymphs, and we caught 6. And so to calculate the total here, again, we're going to look at how many species we caught. So we caught crane fly, which is worth 2 points, a dragonfly, which is worth 2 points, and a mite, which is worth 2 points. So adding those points up, we get a total of 6. And then I've already tallied up how many riffle beetles we've caught, which is our only sensitive species in the Lucky Duck stream. And that's 6, so we only get 3 points. So we're going to add a total of 3. And once you have all your categories totaled, what we're going to do is we're going to add the totals up together to figure out our water quality rating. So from sensitive, we have 3. From somewhat sensitive, we have 6. And from tolerant, we have 2. So we're going to add them all up together. So 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. So let's find 11 on here. And 11, oh, it's fair, 11 to 16. So we're going to color that in. So the Lucky Duck stream is fair, which means it's not the most healthy water body out there. We had a lot of somewhat sensitive species, and we've had a tolerant and one sensitive species type. So this stream might need some work. We might need to do some cleaning or add more plants to add shade, something to help our macroinvertebrates and the salmon that live in the Lucky Duck Creek. So I encourage you now at home to try this on your own with your own unique creek or stream or river, and I'm curious, maybe you will get excellent water quality ratings. Maybe you will get poor, where you have to figure out what might help your water body in the future. You can play this as many times as you'd like, and we're actually going to use the same data sheet if you get the chance to go out in the field. This is exactly what we use in outdoors as well. So enjoy the simulation game, and when you're finished, come back to the video for our next step. How did the simulation game go? Did you end up with a really healthy stream, or did you maybe end up with a really polluted stream? Maybe somewhere in the middle? It's really cool to see how many different combinations of macroinvertebrates can really determine the health of a stream. So what we're going to do next, if you're able to with an adult or a guardian, we are going to go out in the field, and you are going to catch your own macros and determine the health of the water at your own site. If you're not able to get out to the creek or river, with a parent or guardian, that's okay. You can play that simulation game as many times as you want. I might just go play it again as well. So before we get started, there's some really important materials we're going to need for this macroinvertebrate study. You need a hand net, a spoon, a handy dandy hand lens, a tray, an ice cube tray, your data sheets, a writing utensil, your awesome macroinvertebrate guide, and any instructions or curriculum that you need for this. Alright, so before you get in the field, I'm going to show you some important things to remember. So there's a few guidelines we want you to follow if you're going to get in the creek water or whatever water body you're going to visit. So first off, don't drink the water. This water hasn't been filtered. It's not the cleanest for humans to drink. Just drink the water that you can get at home or bring a water bottle with you. Second, if you're going to go in the water, please make sure you only go as deep as half your calf. Third, always make sure you have a buddy, like a parent or a guardian with you, to make sure you're safe at all times. Fourth, avoid deep, fast-moving water. Right now, I am here at a riffle. It's very shallow, and so I have some nice dry rocks to stand on, so this is a pretty safe spot to be, and I'm not even really in the water, so this is a great spot to look for macroinvertebrates. So now that we know how to safely access the water bodies for catching macroinvertebrates, we're going to try and catch some. So I'm going to show you what you need to do. So first, you want to take your tray and fill this up with water. This is really important because we're going to make a little mini habitat for our macros. So I just set my tray down. It's full of water. It's ready to go. And so as we catch macros, we're going to put them in the tray. And then when you're done and we're going to go identify them, make sure the tray stays in a shady spot so the macroinvertebrates stay safe and cool. So now what we're going to do is with your net, we're going to go in the water. We're going to move some rocks around. You can rub the rocks together. You can dig in if there's any silt or sediment, dig in there, and that's where the macros are going to be. So let's see what I can catch. So after catching all those macros, we are back here in the shade. And what you're going to do next is you're going to take that spoon and we're going to catch the macros in the tray and put them into this ice cube tray. So make sure you fill up the little squares in your ice cube tray. And we're going to try and catch some macros. And sometimes it helps to stir things up a little bit so you can see some movement. So I found a teeny tiny macro.
Alright, so we caught one. I'm going to shake my spoon so I swim it in there. Oh, got another one. Just dip the spoon in.
Oh, here's a big macroinvertebrate. Ooh. Sometimes they might need a little help on the spoon. So now that we've separated our macroinvertebrates, Kristen here has volunteered to hold the tray. You're going to take your handy dandy hand lens and we're going to magnify the macroinvertebrates that we have. This will help us when we're trying to identify the macros so we can see them a little bit better. So as you can see, it has 2 antennae, 6 legs, and 2 tail segments. So those are some really important clues to figure out what this macroinvertebrate is. This will also help us with the much smaller macros so we can see them a bit closer. And so you might have to play with your hand lens a little bit to get a better view by moving it forward and back and trying to center on the macroinvertebrate. Welcome back! How was the rest of your macroinvertebrate study? Did you determine if you had a healthy watershed or a healthy stream? Did you determine if you had an unhealthy or poor quality water body? I'm really curious what you found. So based on what you found, what do you think you can do to either protect your stream or the site you went to, or even your imaginary stream from your simulation game? What would you do to protect it if it was really a healthy water body? On the other hand, what would you do to maybe help clean up or also protect your water bodies that may have been more polluted or somewhere in the middle? What are some things that you yourself can do? I would love for you to write some ideas down that you could do or maybe your family could do. So I want to thank you so much for participating in this awesome study, and I hope you get to go out and explore more. Catch you next time!